Hello students, welcome to IAS by Heart. Welcome to the Prelims Heist series. In the series, this is the fourth session we are going to conduct. I'm sorry, fifth session. I hope you have been following us. I request you to kindly follow this regularly so that you will get the true benefit of this initiative. So without any further delay, let's get into today's questions. Let's look at the first question. The first question, it talks about overseas citizenship of India. Let's look at the statements. An applicant is not eligible for OCI card if the parents or grandparents have ever been a citizen of Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Bangladesh. They are saying that these three countries, if their parents or grandparents had been part of this country or citizen of this country, then they'll not be eligible for OCI citizenship. Let's look at the second statement. In Citizenship Amendment Act of 2015, the PIO category has been merged with OCI category. They're asking which of the statements is not correct. Kindly pay your attention to this. Are they asking for statements which are not correct or correct? So in this question, they are talking about not correct statements. Let's look at the answer. The correct answer is one only. By this time, we should have guessed that there should be some kind of twist in the number of countries, or only these countries are included, etc. Let's look at the explanation now. Ministry of Home Affairs defines OCI. A person who is OCI is who was a citizen of India on or after 26 January 1950. After that, they could have become citizen of another country, etc. He was eligible to become a citizen. Either he should have been a citizen or he was at least eligible to become a citizen. Or their parents or grandparents should be a citizen of this our country. According to Section 7A of the OCA card rules, an applicant is not eligible. When is he not eligible? When his parents or grandparents have been a citizen of either Pakistan or Bangladesh. In the question, they said that Afghanistan is also included, but as per the OCA rules, Afghanistan is not included in this category. Hence, statement 1 is not correct. In 2015, as they said before, the Citizenship Amendment Act, it merged persons of Indian origin with OCI category. To understand this better, I'll tell you what is persons of Indian origin. A person of Indian origin means he is actually a foreign citizen, except the nation of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, China, Iran, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. Except these, if he is a citizen of any other country, he'll be called as a person of Indian origin. Who actually he'll be called so if he had held an Indian passport at any time, and who or either of his parents, grandparents, or even great grandparents were born permanently and they were resident of India, which was defined in Government of India Act of 1935. And or else, if they were some other part, if they were citizen of some other part, and that part became an Indian territory either through accession or through war or through any agreement, etc. And if a person is a PIO, and his spouse can also be called as a PIO. Let's look at the second question for now. This question is from economy. Which of the following are the major sources of human capital? There are two kinds of capital. One is physical capital, the next one is human capital. Physical capital refers to things that are tangible, like machines, infrastructure, logistics, etc. So what does this human capital means? We should know that. And which are the major sources of human capital? If we have to have proper human capital, what are the sources of human capital? First one, they talk about education. Second is health, establishment of modern industries, migration. So, from which of these followings can we get human capital? Yes, education sounds reasonable because well-educated population can serve as a better human capital. Healthy population can serve better. Migration from rural areas to urban areas, they provide a major chunk of the working capital, thereby which comes under a human capital. Establishment of modern industries come under physical capital. If we know this distinction, we can very well answer this question. The correct answer is B, 1 to 4 only. Moving on, human capital actually denotes the monetary value of knowledge, skills and competencies of a person. For example, if you know something, if you have some skill, if you know Photoshop or something, etc., some software, etc., then you can say that I am a human capital. I know what my worth is. Investment in human capital is needed for technological growth, improving productivity, creating social innovations, etc. For example, scientists are part of human capital because they help in technological growth, improving productivity, they help to create innovations, etc. Therefore, to calculate human capital, you need to take his earnings today. What he is earning today and what he will earn in future, so that we can understand how important he is to the organization, to the society, to the country. Generally, human capital formation is considered as the outcome of investment in various fields. For example, if the government is properly investing in education, then we'll have well-educated population. If there are many scholarships for education, then many of the people will be educated. Then the human capital will also be educated. Health, skill or job training, migration, digital literacy, etc. So I would advise you to learn at least one or two schemes for each of these points. Successful schemes for education, health, skill training, Kaushal Vikas Yojana, something like that, migration, information or digital literacy, etc. So that since this forms a very important part of human capital, you can address this question even asked in mains. Clearly, the most three important pillars are education, health, and employment. That is why these three areas are the major focus whenever a budget is presented. They'll first thing they'll see is how much money is allocated to education sector, how much health is allocated. Education and health forms how many percentage of GDP, etc. These become the very important points of discussion because they form very important pillar of human capital. Okay. I told you the other kind of capital is physical capital. It is related to non-human asset like machinery, buildings, computers, infrastructure, etc. These are tangible in nature. That is, you can physically see them, feel them, etc. It is divided into two categories: working capital, fixed capital. Working capital meaning that keeps on changing, like people who are working, etc. Fixed capital, for example, if one building is considered as a capital, then that will be for, lifelong, that will be the building for the company, correct? So it is a fixed capital, that is, it is not changing. Physical capital includes man-made goods that are used in the process of production for converting raw material into finished goods. That is what is machineries. We can say machines form part of physical capital. Any new project requires a significant amount of investment in physical capital. Okay, for example, I'll tell you an example. If you want to start a restaurant, the stove, the kitchen items, that everything you buy, that is what is physical capital. The chefs you hire to cook food, right? They are the human capital. Okay. So, question number 3. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. We have been seeing this quite often in the news. Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. It is a nuclear arms control treaty between US and Russia that is given in the question itself, that has been recently extended to 5th of November 2026. This agreement was renewed just one day before. Okay, consider the following statements with regard to the state. The New START Pact limits the number of deployed nuclear warheads and bombs to 1510 only. This was signed in 2010 by former President Barack Obama and then Russian President. US also joined the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which limited the use of medium-range missiles, both conventional and nuclear. So we have to know which of these statements are incorrect. Let's look at the answer. The correct answer is 3 only, because in the era of previous US president, that is Mr. Trump, actually what happened was it did not want to renew this START treaty, that is arms reduction treaty between US and Russia. It actually accused Russia that it is cheating US. There was that kind of bone of contention, and also it quit from intermediate ranges nuclear forces treaty. This is for medium range missiles. So US did not join, it actually left out of this. The Russian President, Mr. Putin, signed the New START treaty between Russia and US, and the treaty is extended up to 2026. This limits the number of deployed nuclear warheads, missiles, bombers, etc. It was actually due to expire in 2021. The treaty limits US and Russia to a maximum of 1,500 nuclear warheads. Even this is at a very alarming number. 1550 is not a small number. But the Cold War time number was really very huge. Compared to that, this 1550 is very less. It was signed in 2010 by US President and Russian President, then Russian President, Mr. Dmitry. It is one of the key controls on superpower deployment of nuclear weapons. Nuclear power weapons is one of the major bone of contention between various nations, especially when considered between two powers, the two who have a history of problems in Cold War era, etc. In February, US withdrew from the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, accusing Russia of violating the agreement. So it did not join, it actually left out of the treaty. US in early December announced that it would suspend its obligations under the INF treaty, citing Russia cheating. The US government says the Russian missile, the new missile that was produced by Russia, actually violates the provisions of the pact. Testing and deployment of land-based missile within a range of 310 to 340, 3,400. This was actually the original pact. But US accuses Russia that it is preparing missiles that has a range more than 3,400. INF Treaty, formally treaty between US and actually Soviet Socialist Republics for elimination of short-range missiles and medium-range missiles. This is a 1987 Arms Control Agreement. Under the INF Treaty, the US and USSR agreed to eliminate within 3 years the ground-launched missiles of 500 to 5,500 kilometers and not develop or produce this in future. US destroyed 846 ground-launched cruise missiles and USSR reduced 1,800 missiles. Even then, US is accusing USSR that it is still cheating. Therefore, it left out of this treaty. Moving on, let's look at the question number 4. It is from Reports and Indices. Inclusive Wealth Report, sometimes seen in news. I think you guys can kind of guess this. I'll give you a few seconds to guess. This Inclusive Wealth Report is released by which agency? The correct answer is UN Environment. Let's look at the details of this report. This is actually a biennial report. Biennial meaning 2 years once. Remember to find the difference between biennial and biannual. So this Inclusive Wealth Report is actually led by UN Environment to evaluate the capacity and performance of the nation to measure sustainability of economy and well-being of their people. Therefore, a country's inclusive wealth is the social value, not the dollar price. For example, one of the important problems that we say, one of the disadvantages we have with GDP is it calculates only the monetary value. It does not calculate the impact on the environment, what will happen if, how the development is affecting the ecology, etc. So this Inclusive Wealth Report takes the social value, not the dollar price of all its capital assets, including natural capital, human capital, and produced capital. So let's look at the next question, which is from Environment Global Forest Cover. The largest proportion of the world's forests were tropical, followed by boreal forest, temperate forest, and subtropical forest. Asia has had the largest annual rate of net forest loss in 2010 to 2020. See, this statement looks kind of skeptical. Let's keep this on hold because Asia, it doesn't actually have a lot of forest and it is quite developed. I mean, it is between medium developed and highly developed nation. Therefore, this will not happen. Usually, huge rate of forest loss happens where there is it is least developed or it is in the very nascent stage of developing, etc. So let's keep this on hold. The area of naturally regenerating forest increased, but the area of planted forest decreased. See, this statement also is, there is a little logic behind it. Naturally regenerating forest, it will take years and years to build up because a tree takes at least 10 to 20 years to develop, and this to measure this, it will become very difficult. An area of planted forest, that is, for example, in India, we have, if an area is cleared, if deforestation happens in an area, we have another method, which is afforestation, Campa funds, etc. So the number of planted forest actually should be more than the naturally regenerating forest. If you apply some logic here, you would know that this third statement is totally out of logic. Let's look at the correct answer. They are asking the what are the incorrect statements. So statement 2 and 3 is incorrect. Global Forest Resources Assessment 2020 has been released by United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. This is actually totally unexpected. FAO releases the Forest Resource Assessment. So have a look at this. This examines the status and trends in more than 60 forest-related variables, like how forest fires are, how which many countries are prone to forest fire, what are the reasons for forest fires, increase in forest cover, decrease in forest cover, etc. The forest area has declined all across the world in past 3 decades. The world has lost 178 million hectares, that is equal to the size of Libya in Africa. So we have lost that much area in 3 decades. The rate of forest loss is declined due to the growth of sustainable management. So there is some kind of awareness creation, but still declining of forest is happening only. The rate of forest is declined to estimated 10 million hectares from 178 million hectares. That happened in 3 decades. Okay, this 10 million hectares, it is expected to decline to 10 million from 12 million. Okay, the area of naturally regenerating forest decreased because we are, the lumbering industry, etc. They reduce the, they go for deforestation, etc. But the area of planted forest increased by 123 million hectares. This is due to various sustainable development goals, governments promoting afforestation, etc. Let's look at the highest loss and highest gains. Africa has had the largest annual rate of net forest loss. As I told you before, this where there is more depletion of natural resources like forest, the areas which come under primary sector. Which countries depend more on primary sector? Usually the least developing countries. So not Asia, but Africa has lost a large number of forests. On the other hand, Asia had the highest net gain of forest area. If we look at this, we can get an idea. Africa, here is India. This green color is India. We have gained 2% of forests. This is actually the total number of forests worldwide. Worldwide, 20% of forest is in Russia only. And then 5% in China. Australia has 3%. India has 2% of the global forest. Canada has 9% of the forest. That's why there is lumbering industry flourishing. Lumbering industry depends on, paper making, furniture making, etc. Let's move on to the next slide. The world's total forest area was 4.06 billion hectares, which was 31% of the total land area. If the land area is, if we take 100% of that, 30% is forest, 70% is land. This is equivalent to 0.5 hectare per person. The largest proportion were tropical forest because we know they dominate the tropical belt, boreal forest, temperate and subtropical forest. More than 54% of world's forests were only in 5 countries. That is, 5 countries have more than 50, almost 50% of world's forest. They are Russia, because that is the largest country. The second largest country, Canada. Brazil, because it has Amazon. United States and China. All the bigger countries occupy almost 50% of the world's forest. The highest percentage of plantation forests were in South America. The lowest were in Europe. Plantation forest includes coffee, tea, rubber, etc. Moving on to the next question, question number 6. This is regarding net neutrality. It means that both governments and internet service providers treat all data on the internet equally and do not charge differently. This is precisely what net neutrality is. It advocates providing the same level of data access and speed to all traffic, and the traffic to one service or website cannot be blocked or degraded. So let's look at which of the statements are, which of the statements are correct. Both the statements are correct. Let's look at the explanation. What is net neutrality? It is a principle that internet service providers, for example, Vodafone, Idea, BSNL, Reliance, all these people are internet service providers, also called as internet access providers, enable access to all content and application regardless of the source and without favoring or blocking any particular product or website. So this means when the customers pay for a data plan, they should be able to access all content. For example, if we are paying for a data pack, then only if, imagine if only Facebook is free and the other websites are we have to pay extra cost, or it loads in at a very low data speed. That is what is called as non-net neutrality. So a quick reminder of what is net neutrality. That is, the traffic of internet should be treated equally. No blocking should be there. Like if you haven't paid extra amount, you cannot access few websites. That should not be there. No throttling and no paid prioritization. In the next slide, I'll tell you how it will be if we had a net pack without net neutrality. For example, if you top up for $5, then you'll have access only to Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. If you pay for $10, these many websites. For $15, as the pay increases, the number of websites or the number of apps you get access to increases. If you pay for $100, you get access to everything. See here, majority of the people who are poor people, they will not be able to access the $100 data plan. So what will happen? There will be a bias. Only people who have money can access all the things in the internet, but internet is a public good, so we cannot discriminate on it. TRAI has released Prohibition of Discriminatory Tariffs for Data Services Regulation 2016. That is where it talks about net neutrality. These regulations prohibit telecom service providers or internet service providers from charging different tariffs for accessing different services online. Therefore, irrespective of the money, $5, $10, or even $100 you pay, you have to get access to everything. Moving on to question number 7. Government of India decided to celebrate the birthday of which iconic personality as Parakram Divas? Dadabhai Naoroji, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Subhash Chandra Bose, Lal Bahadur Shastri. If you understand the meaning of Parakram, you will surely narrow it down to 2 options, that is C or D. The correct option is Subhash Chandra Bose. This is the first time we are celebrating this Parakram Divas on 23rd January, that is his birthday. The objective is to remember his spirit, selfless service to the nation, to inspire the people of country, especially youth. He had a very major, big youth following, and to act with fortitude in the face of adversity. Like one should not be pulled down by the negatives that he faces, etc. Gazette notification has been published. The Government of India decided to celebrate the 125th this year. This is the 125th birth anniversary of Subhash Chandra Bose. Therefore, it is being celebrated as Parakram Divas from 2021. High-level committee headed by Prime Minister and constituted for deciding the programs. For example, for Vivekananda, we celebrate it as National Youth Day. Okay, and for Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, we celebrate it as Nation Unity Day. For Subhash Chandra Bose, we are celebrating it as Parakram Divas. What are the, what will happen during this day? What are the programs? What are the schemes that we can do? That will be decided by the high-level committee. Moving on to question number 8. Match the festivals of India with their respective states. In art and culture, one of the most prominent area that they can ask questions is festivals, Chapcharkut, Kati Bihu, Hornbill. One thing, if you know that Hornbill is the state bird of Nagaland. So this kind of this festival can be matched with Nagaland. If you can narrow it down to 2, then you have only 2 options. You have 50% chance of getting this as right. A option or B. Nuakai Juar, This is another festival, Harvest Festival of Odisha. Let's look at the correct answer. The correct answer is 4312. That is, Chapcharkut is the festival of Mizoram. Kati Bihu is the festival of Assam. Nukai Juar is a festival of Odisha. One thing you have to learn about festivals is what is the occasion that it is celebrated? Is this the first time that is celebrated? Is there any different thing? For example, in few festivals, animal sacrifice is allowed. If there are some specific or special features about the festival, that you have to note down. I'll give you a brief overview of each of this festival. Chapcharkut is a festival of Mizoram. It is celebrated during March. That is after the cultivation of Jum operation. Jum we have studied. It is the slash and burn agriculture. It is a spring festival. So once you know a festival, you have to know on which occasion it is celebrated, on which month it is celebrated. So Chapcharkut is Mizoram. Have a look at this image. Moving on, Kati Bihu. This is actually festival that is celebrated in Assam. This is one of the three Bihu festivals. The others are Kangali Bihu and Kati Bihu, etc. It is usually celebrated when the crops are at the growing stage. Remember, the Chapcharkut festival is at the beginning of slash and burn agriculture. That is before the agriculture is going to happen. This is at the harvest stage. In this festival, earthen lamps are lit in the households. In the initial days when pesticides were not there, usually these earthen lamps, because of its brightness, it attracts insects. So it acts as a natural insecticide. Earthen lamps were lit all around the paddy crops to captivate the insects. It acts as a natural insecticide. So during night time, they lit these earthen lamps around the crops that has to be harvested. Hornbill Festival, it is called as the Festival of Festivals. It is actually a 10-day festival to showcase the rich and diverse Naga ethnicity to various music, handicraft, cuisine, etc. 21st edition of this festival went digital because of this COVID pandemic. And this start of this festival, that is December 1, marks the formation of Nagaland, that is Naga statehood day. The color, it is named after Indian hornbill. I'll show you the picture of the hornbill bird. It is a forest bird, which is one of the prides of Naga tribes. Taking cue from Nagaland, Tripura also celebrated this festival because this festival it showcases their ethnicity, their diverse culture, and also it boosts tourism. So Tripura also started celebrating this festival. This is a snap taken during the festival. These men are Naga tribes. This is the hornbill bird. It has a very large beak. It is especially found in northeast, and it is the state bird of Nagaland. This gentleman, he also belongs to Naga tribe. Moving on, Nuaki Jur. It is an agricultural festival observed by people of Western Odisha. And also in Chhattisgarh, it is celebrated when the new grown kharif crop started ripening. That is, this is also more or like this festival is celebrated before harvest. It is observed on Panchami Tithi, and it is the most important social festival of Odisha, adjoining states of Nagaland, Chhattisgarh, etc. This is more or like a harvest festival, like how we celebrate Pongal in Tamil Nadu. This is a harvest festival of Odisha. Moving on to question number 9, Prime Minister Wi-Fi Access Network Interface, that is WANI. It aims to bring large-scale deployment of Wi-Fi hotspot and improve the digital access. Public Data Office are entities which will procure internet bandwidth and establish Wi-Fi access points. Which of the following are not correct? I'm sorry, which of the following is correct? Both the options are correct. To promote digital literacy and internet proliferation, the Government of India launched a PM WANI scheme. It aims to bring large-scale deployment of Wi-Fi hotspots. For example, Wi-Fi hotspot at railway stations, airports, bus stands, all other public places. That is the aim of the scheme. Public Data Office are entities which procure the internet bandwidth and establish pre-operate PM WANI compliant Wi-Fi access points. Therefore, both the statements are correct. They will not be required to obtain any license or register with any authority, and no fees will be charged for this public data offices. Public data office aggregator, he will be an aggregator and will perform the functions relating to authorization of users. For example, no misuse of this has to happen. So they have to register with Department of Telecom. App providers will develop an app to register a user, discover the Wi-Fi access points, display the name, etc. The central registry will maintain the details that will be maintained in the respective ministry. Moving on to the last question, question number 10. Consider the following statements regarding M sand or manufactured sand. This M sand is recently very much promoted by the government to be an alternative for the river sand and to thereby curbing the illegal sand mining processes. Manufactured sand is produced from hard granite stone by crushing. The size is more than 4.75 mm. If it is more than 75 mm, then it cannot be a replacement for river sand. Correct? So let's see which of the options are correct. Only first option is correct. Rajasthan government brought a policy on MSAN giving industry status to the units producing it. If it is given industry status, then they can get institutionalized loans, they can hire laborers for them, etc. Thereby providing industry status, Rajasthan government has given legalized this production of MSAN. Supreme Court banned illegal mining on riverbeds in 2017. So, if we ban something that is in progress, then we surely have to make a replacement for it. So, the replacement for the riverbed sand is what is M sand. It is a substitute for river sand for concrete construction. It is produced from hard granite stone by crushing them. It is of cubical shape with grounded edges. The one major advantage of this is it can be customized to our size. Since it is man-made, it can be done. It is washed, graded as a construction material. The size is less than 4.75 mm. It can be dust-free. These are the advantages. Dust-free. The sizes can be controlled easily since it is manufactured. Depending upon the construction, the size of sand that is required for a bridge construction will not be equal to a home construction. Though, so we can customize it easily. It is well graded in the required proportion. It does not contain any organic or soluble compound. That is, since it is manufactured, it will not have this organic waste or organic matter like leaves, dust particles, etc. Because if these are present in the, these are actually present in the river sand, thereby the setting time will increase and the properties of the cement, thus requiring strength of the concrete can be maintained for constructing bigger projects, which are like very significant. If those projects fail, then that can be a huge loss to the infrastructure. That kind of project can be constructed using MSAN. It does not have the presence of impurities such as clay, dust, silt, etc. So here is a coverage. We saw about OCI citizen, who are OCI, who are PIO, etc. And we saw the distinction between human capital and physical capital, START treaty between US and Russia, and what is the significance of it, inclusive wealth report produced by FAO, global forest cover, the forest cover of all the countries, what is the contribution of each country of forest cover, and is it increasing or decreasing, etc. And we saw the concept of net neutrality. What is net neutrality? Do we have to have it? Parakram Divas, that is birthday of Subhash Chandra Bose, state festival, Chapcharpur, Nuwaki Juar, etc. PM Wani, the Wi-Fi access network, and MSAN. So that's all for this session. I hope this session was useful, and we highly hope that one of the questions directly or indirectly will appear from the sessions that we are uploading. Our target number of questions is 500 questions. So I kindly advise you to regularly follow our initiator on every alternate way. That's all for today's session. Thank you.